Post-pandemic college enrollment numbers are still on the decline. Is college worth it?
The education system is failing Americans.
This was actually a problem pre-pandemic.
You do not need a college degree.
A college degree does not matter.
And confidence is at a historic low, with only 36% of Americans expressing a great deal of trust. And so if things aren't fixed, are we screwed? And so to explore the topic, I asked Harvard students, teachers, parents, and even more about the US education system.
The current education system is in shambles.
Teachers work so much overtime, but they don't even pay you for regular time.
When I go into the classroom, everything is political.
So you were homeschooled?
Yes. Nice to meet you, Marissa. So I saw you on the Liberal Teachers, Conservative Parents one.
My name is Marissa Streit. I'm the CEO of PragerU. I'm also a former traditional educator. I taught K through 7th grade in California.
There has been a historic low when it comes to confidence in higher education. Why do you think this is?
If you take a loan, it's the one loan that you can't ever default on, and so you're saddled with it forever. How do you actually make a conscientious business decisions to spend all this money for 4 years and come out with really nothing but a piece of paper?
College used to be the end-all be-all, right? Like the goal. But now you don't have to have that specific type of intelligence to be successful.
It's starting to become a thing where only the wealthiest families can afford to send their students to an Ivy League school, paying it in full and without achieving a scholarship.
Do you feel like the educational system that you received wasn't enough?
It's all a scam. I don't want to work for somebody the rest of my life. I want to be the CEO.
In Texas, it's just you're learning such a one-sided story sometimes. It's very much like America is number one, and all these other countries are below us.
Everyone's trying to get a good grade, but no one's actually learning.
Can you name 3 countries outside of North America?
Oh my God. Asia.
Name me 3 countries outside of North America.
Hell, I don't know.
Yeah, North America, South America.
I think the current education system in America is in shambles. Literacy rates, history rates, math rates, civic rates are constantly dropping. And if you took the capacity and the capability of a 6th or 8th grader from 50 years ago versus a 6th grader today, the fact that we spend so much more money per child in America yet receive such poor results is very alarming.
But when the issue goes beyond money, what can be done? Because when 54% of American adults have a literacy rate below a 6th grade level, at this point, is it too late? Not when you use Grammarly. Grammarly is an AI-powered writing tool that's easy to use and will help you with your writing, from brainstorming ideas to even citations for research. And so whenever I'm feeling stuck starting my script, writing emails, or even coming up with interview questions, I use Grammarly to help inspire ideas, outlines, and even tips. And whenever I write, I need to make sure that it not only captures, but also keeps your attention. Grammarly can help you simplify, improve, and even shorten your script, email, or essay to say more with less. So Grammarly is a must-have for all students and professionals. So sign up for a free account with my link, grammarly.com/get. And if you want to get access to extra features, you'll get 20% off using that link. Because even with all the tools in the world to help students, the question remains. When kids today can't even name 3 countries, what exactly are the teachers doing?
So we are what's called a Title I school. We receive federal funding because a majority of the students are below the poverty line. The home environment is very important when it comes to a child's academic success. I had this expectation that all of these parents are just gonna do whatever the work needs to be done in order to get their child to be successful. However, a lot of these parents don't have time to do that. They're working 12-hour shifts, they're working multiple jobs. They don't want to spend the very small free time that they have going to an elementary school to talk with a teacher about how to improve their child's academic success. They want to spend that precious time with their actual families.
44% of teachers quit after 5 years or something like that. Why do you think there is such a high quitting rate amongst teachers, and what was your specific reason?
The lack of respect for teachers in general. Teachers work so much overtime, but they don't even pay you for regular time.
You can't hold the product maker accountable. When the taxis couldn't innovate and adapt fast enough, we started using Uber and Lyft. But we can't see that in education because
it's just the lack of support from adults, whether that's administration or parents or society.
There are bureaucrats, there is a Department of Education that is holding America back, there is so much money and corruption involved, and that is simply an industry that I felt suffocated in, and I felt like I couldn't fix it from within, so I decided to fix it in whatever way I can from the outside.
She's not alone.
Across the country, fed-up teachers are calling it quits.
This is a real emergency in public education.
In Maryland, more than 5,500 teachers left the profession last year. And in Florida, there are over 8,800 vacancies, up from 5,500 compared to a year ago. And there's many reasons, but pay is a big one. The average weekly wages of public school teachers, adjusted only for inflation, increased just $29 from 1996 to 2021, from $13.19 to $13.48. And looking at how teachers have been able to inspire the success of many people, one could say that they're worth more than they're paid. But with 74% of teachers unwilling to recommend the profession to newcomers, there's a concerning trend that this kind of impact might be a thing of the past. It may especially be the case for male students.
I've heard from a lot of my female colleagues that it's difficult seeing how attentive children are to me. But yeah, being one of the few male teachers, children are naturally trying to see how much they can get away with, regardless of the gender of the teacher. I definitely think there is a different dynamic in communication styles, at least.
So even though schools are looking to hire, there's a growing shortage of male teachers. So with 25% of families today being raised without a father, students have even less access to potential male role models.
How many males do you hear at a young age, I want to be a teacher?
And while a teacher or your environment can significantly contribute to your future success, outliers always exist. And so I wanted to ask some of the smartest students in the world and how they succeeded against all the odds. I know you are a 4.0 Harvard student, even though you're running a lot of these businesses, but I'm curious, like, what challenges do you face as a student?
My parents, they are first-generation immigrants from Vietnam, and so they couldn't really help me much during my college admissions process, and so that was just extremely hard trying to navigate what opportunities I have and try to get over the barriers. At Harvard, I definitely experienced a social shock. I didn't know the term figly existed. First generation, low income, and it just creates a divide.
There's like a huge, I guess, like wealth gap. Going to Harvard, I never really thought about the idea of boarding school or private school. There's so many people here coming from these feeder schools. They were provided with, a world-class education that prepared them for an education at an Ivy League school. But I went to a public school in rural South Georgia and feel safe going to school a lot of the times.
And while elite institutions commonly admit athletes and legacies comprising around 10% and 12% of Harvard's class of 2018, what's not talked about as much is that almost half of the students admitted came from private high schools. And even though students from prestigious boarding schools historically had lower academic performance compared to their peers, they ultimately earned higher incomes post-graduation.
A college admissions cheating and bribery scandal. It bought students admission into high-profile schools.
It's easier to get into college if you're rich. I feel like that's just a given. Like, everyone knows that.
And what it illustrates is the power of connections, like Harvard Final Clubs, which were more accessible to these wealthier and more connected students. And so whether due to teacher shortages or unequal access to education driven by wealth disparities, the gap is only getting worse. And when traditional methods start facing issues, alternatives inevitably arise. The recent trend that's been going on that's been interesting for me is the rise of homeschooling, where some parents are believing that's going to be a better alternative to the outside of the traditional system. What are your thoughts on these approaches?
I'll humble myself in saying that I was really wrong about homeschooling. I thought that kids who would be homeschooled would be weird and unable to really perform once they would need to socialize. And now that I'm an employer, I really get to see what the market looks like. And I would really say that kids who have been homeschooled have a leg up. They're constantly working through life with people from different ages. But homeschooling is not an option for everybody. It's not an option for me. I work full-time. My husband works full-time.
And so even if it's not feasible for all, since 2019, homeschooling has exploded by 30%. And from reasons such as safety concerns to bad academic quality, what used to be reserved for the weird kids and parents is now slowly becoming mainstream.
This is actually my second year of homeschooling my daughter.
The smartest people I know in my life are homeschoolers.
And so I wanted to ask someone who's been homeschooled to find out the truth.
Was it a struggle, transitioning from a homeschool to a traditional school?
Being homeschooled, I thought originally that it was going to be way more challenging, and I realized that homeschooling was way more difficult. When you're homeschooled, you can't cheat. You can't just slack off, and I was used to kind of more of an intensity form of school. At least that was the way that I learned.
Did you struggle socially?
Not really, but I definitely had a social deprivation. But the interesting part is it translates really well to the modern day world. People, when they go to school, they are becoming friends with people just because they're around people all the time. When you get out of school, you have to intentionally make friends. And I had to learn that at a very young age.
Why do you think there is a stereotype that still exists today, even with the popularity growing of like homeschool kids being kind of weird?
You know, there's a lot of people who are homeschooled for reasons that, you know, they maybe have something wrong with them. Yeah, I mean, I got made fun of a lot growing up, and I think the stereotypes were legitimate, but I think more people nowadays might be looking at this path. There being less of an accuracy in that stereotype as more normal people become homeschooled.
And so when 16% of parents cited the worries about socialization as the primary reason why they decided against homeschooling, it's obvious that the stigma persists.
Homeschool, but
that's why you're weird.
But when studies have revealed that homeschoolers often outperform public school students on standardized tests, is it becoming a more attractive path? But at the same time, when the data is hard to measure, the studies around homeschooling are going to be limited.
Every household is going to homeschool their kids differently. Parents that are great at teaching, and you'd have parents that are terrible. You could have parents that hire tutors that teach you. That is a con, because someone could do homeschool really right and someone could do it very wrong.
Why do you think there has been a rise in homeschooling?
A lot of school systems nowadays are teaching people interesting stuff that maybe isn't what they should be learning. And I think parents are kind of like, I don't know if I want to put my kid through that.
And so if traditional methods aren't delivering, then what's going on in the classrooms? How do you think school systems should address controversial topics in education, whether that be sex education, LGBTQ topics, race?
I don't think it's the place for the schools to turn kids into political ropes, but I also understand that some of it is somewhat inevitable because so much of it is already in the schools. First of all, it depends on the age. I think that when kids are older, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, it's inevitable that they're going to start asking about those questions. And I think that if teachers do choose to bring up these subjects, they need to at least be neutral and bring both perspectives. Let's indoctrinate people to be comfortable with uncomfortable ideas.
I feel like there's this narrative that there are teachers in our public school that's like, okay, it's pronoun time. We're all going to talk about why you can switch your gender or why you can have this or that. That is not the case. Part of elementary school is learning different parts of language. There are some languages that have gendered pronouns. There are some languages that don't have gendered pronouns.
When I talk about a political agenda, the agenda that I have in the classroom is to create an environment where folks are able to, better understand from wherever someone's coming from.
So the way that I view the world, everything is political. When I go into the classroom and say, I want to create an inclusive environment, that right there is a political agenda. I think the way that freshman was phrased is, should teachers be advocating for particular politics in their classroom? And I would disagree with that. I'm not going to promote a fundamentalist worldview where I say, hey, your household is inherently immoral or inherently sinful. The inclusion of LGBTQ comes at such a small, minute part of the overall curriculum that it's not something that should be focused on as a part of indoctrination, as some people might say.
The Florida law critics dub the Don't Say Gay bill is expanding.
The Don't Say Gay bill was introduced, which limits public school teachers from teaching sexual orientation and gender identity, except within a reproductive course that parents can opt out of.
Gender ideology has no place in our K through 12 school system.
On one side, advocates claim that the topics are not age appropriate, while the bill also empowers parents to file lawsuits against districts that violate the ban. While on the other hand, critics like the Trevor Project condemned the bill as an erasure of LGBTQ identity, history, and culture, as well as LGBTQ students themselves.
We want to create spaces of love and acceptance and affirmation for all young people.
And when the Walt Disney Company retaliated by suspending making campaign donations in the state, Governor DeSantis responded by signing legislation that eliminates special privileges and perks afforded to Disney parks in Florida.
How unprecedented is it for a governor to take on Disney in Florida?
It's highly unusual.
But it raises the question, when both sides are censoring information that don't fit in a line with their own narrative, aren't they conveniently contradicting the principles of free speech? And is this hypocritical divide what's causing the US to fall behind?
It's not a money issue. A big part of it is a philosophy of education. Instead of focusing our students on learning, reading, writing, arithmetic, we have moved away from that to all kinds of things. That is not helpful to students. I think that if you ask folks on the streets, do you think that Americans are becoming smarter and more competent? Most people, if they're intellectually honest, will admit that it is not the case. Talk to CEOs and ask them, what is happening with the Gen Zers and the millennials that you're hiring? Most of them will tell you that they have to undo the damage of what they have been learning in schools.
Finland has consistently held the top rank for the best education system in the world, and surprisingly, it comprises of only public schools. Instead of prioritizing memorization and test scores, students receive individual assessments and no standardized tests to promote real learning. And as for the teaching profession, it's different in that it requires a master's degree and is highly esteemed in society. But recently, there's evidence that innovation doesn't always mean sustained excellence. Recent studies suggest that student-led methods along with reduced homework and tests in Finland have led to lower accountability and structure. And the result is an environment that's not conducive to long-lasting educational progress. And so when it comes to education, it's hard to declare one system as the best. And it becomes pretty damn clear when you look across the globe. Because even though China doesn't appear on many lists for the best education systems in the world, it's clear that their approach has played a large role in propelling them to become the world's second largest economy. In 2018, China ranked first in the PISA, a global assessment that tests the skills and knowledge of 15-year-olds worldwide. And these early results are leading to lasting ones. China has now topped the US for contributing the most scientific and technical journal articles than any country in the world. All this success isn't without its costs. In a system that prioritizes high scores, the Gaokao, or college entrance exam, offers just one annual opportunity to get the highest scores, making it a significant event for parents banking on their child's success. And this immense pressure has led students to get creative and authorities to crack down. Students have devised elaborate cheating schemes to secure success, prompting authorities to deploy identity verification, surveillance cameras, and even drones. And those that were caught received more than a slap on the wrist. So the Finnish and Chinese education systems clearly occupy opposite ends of the spectrum. And if truth lies somewhere in between, can Americans learn from the two? But when reality and theory are two separate things, the question is, what are our priorities? What are your thoughts on equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity?
They can't both coexist. I'm a hustler, and I want to know that if I wake up earlier and I stay up later and I work harder and smarter, I have the opportunity to accomplish anything in this country. If we give everybody the same finish line, why should anybody wake up earlier or stay up later? They ultimately end up with the same results.
I feel like if we focus on equality of outcome first, we're not targeting the core issue at hand.
I taught at an Apple certified school where every single kid has iPads, being very different from I've taught at a Title I school or a school that just like was headphones that were crumbling during like test days and they were expected to use this and still do well on a test, right? That equality of opportunity is not there because the equality of resources is still not there and equality of funding is still not there.
In order to have equality of opportunity, we do have to bring people into equal playing fields. And so if you have somebody again who has time at home to be heavily invested in, you have a student who does not have that same opportunity, then we need to try to prioritize as a society, how can we get that person up to the same level to where they both having the opportunity to succeed.
The immigrants that come here to the United States, they don't come here because they want a handout. They come here because they know that there is a chance that if they put in the work, they will actually do better. Nobody has the same starting point. We all come with our baggage, and some of us come with more gifts than others.
But when those supposed gifts can be fabricated, an argument can be made that opportunities is a reality to a privileged few and an illusion to many. Because what Operation Varsity Blues exposed was the largest college admissions scandal in American history.
So this massive college admissions scandal, 50 people facing charges and more arrests are likely in the weeks and months ahead.
From 2011 to 2019, families nationwide paid William Rick Singer, a college counselor, $25 million to ensure their children's entry into elite schools like Stanford.
By the side door, I may be able to go to the family coach and say, hey, this family's willing to make a contribution.
Parents would donate $250K to even $400K to Singer's foundation, and he would would funnel the money to coaches to designate said kid as athletes, even if they never played the sport. And for particularly low test scores, he would bribe proctors $10,000 each to alter answers. And it was only after the FBI uncovered the scam using wiretaps and exposed the direct involvement of numerous high-profile celebrities and their children that noose finally broke loose. And so with all the debate on affirmative action, rising costs of education, and the devaluing of the college degree, when stories like this are exposed, is it any surprise that confidence in higher education is at an all-time low? Because if there's one thing about America, is that it's a country of extremes. And the education system is no exception, with one end showing extreme excellence and the other severe underperformance. And with such a strong divide, is there any hope left? What do you think that we can do to improve the educational system?
We need to get the politicians out of the classrooms, and I think we need to take a deep look into the Marxist agenda behind the teacher colleges that are essentially teaching our kids to grow up thinking that they're victims.
Involvement on both the parent level and then the government stepping in to regulate certain areas where we are stepping below the pale.
So even though we may never find common ground on the approach, both sides can agree that there's a need for change. Because say all you want about America, but there still is a reputation as the leader in innovation and cultural influence. And if that's at stake, is there time to really do nothing? What advice would you then give to students in this current, educational climate?
Start by what your ideal future is. Nevertheless, being curious and learning every day is what is most important.
Because success doesn't always come to the smartest individuals, but instead it favors those who are curiously bold with a bias towards action. And today, where access to anything is possible with the right combination of keys, the first step only starts by exploring the unfamiliar. And so thanks to our sponsor Grammarly, and like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos where I turn street interviews into investigative journalism. And if YouTube is so educated, then you'll like this video too.